Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Library of Birmingham. My name is Adrian Steele, and I'm the Director of Collections and Programmes for the Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA. I'm really pleased to welcome you to our event, Build, Regenerate, Transform, a Future Vision for Birmingham, which forms part of our Wellbeing, Well-Built Talks series. And this series is part of our ongoing partnership with VitrA Bathrooms. I'd like to thank VitrA Bathrooms very much for sponsoring this important series of talks. So we're really looking forward to hearing this evening's presentations from Paul Kitson, Anna Parker, Alexandra Slatter, Dav Bansal, and Alessandro Milani, who will be joining us online. And we're hearing about the really exciting, recent and ongoing architectural projects that Birmingham has to offer. After the presentations, in just over an hour's time, there'll be opportunity for questions from the audience. So please be sure to keep any questions in mind. And colleague Margaret, hello Margaret, will be on hand to bring around a microphone for questions when the time comes. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Paul, who will be our first speaker this evening. We'll also be chairing the panel's discussion later on. So Paul is Birmingham City Council's Strategic Director for Place, Prosperity and Sustainability, working to develop and lead the ambitious programmes at the heart of the Council's strategies. He started his career in community-led programmes with groundwork and within housing associations before spending 10 years at the Homes and Communities Agency, the precursor to Homes England. So Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adrian. That's fantastic. Good evening, everybody. Congratulations for coming back to this room twice for this event. Really warm welcome. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up for you this evening. Plenty to talk about. Completely different scale of opportunities. People are going to talk about completely different perspectives from some of the city's finest architectural brains. But before we get on to the interesting pictures, I'm afraid I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the facts and figures. So I'd like to talk to you, I think that's Alessandro fading in and out there in the background. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what's been going on in the city around the delivery of growth. I'd like to talk to you about some of the challenges around delivering growth. And then I want to talk to you about the Our Future City plan. So it's very much the City Council's role in all of our lives to provide the framework and the space for you as architects in the profession and the development sector to deliver excellent growth. So I'd like to talk to you about the Our Future City plan, which is a spatial plan at its heart. But actually this evening I'd like to just talk to you about the descriptive and the qualitative stuff around the Our Future City plan, the stuff which tells you how we think the city should be, how it should feel, what it should be like to be in the place. And obviously we're doing that in a highly collaborative way, so many of you will have been engaged in that. So let's just think about the planning context, the macro planning context for the city and how it fits together. And one of the things that you'll have seen as residents, as people that work in the city, for those of you who don't live or work in the city, but you're visitors, you'll have seen across the summer, the Commonwealth Games shone a fantastic light, didn't it, on a city which has been flourishing, a real renaissance of the city over the past decade or so. It's no accident that the place looks fantastic. It's the culmination of partnership working across many, many hard yards across that 10-year period. But the city looked fantastic. And the Birmingham plan was adopted in 2017. It was pretty ambitious. It talked about some pretty high numbers of housing growth, some pretty high numbers for employment space. And it talked about the way the city should be. Now, in broad terms, the broad city has delivered more homes than it originally anticipated through the local plan. The plan period is not finished yet, so that will change as we go through. So on balance, more homes than we'd anticipated, but fewer affordable homes than we'd anticipated. The supply of employment land, which is really important for us to think about alleviating some of those issues that the city faces. Don't forget there are places in the city where we've got twice the national rate of unemployment. These are one of the things that kind of keep us awake at the City Council. So the supply of employment land, making sure that is a service ready for end users is a really important point, and making sure that we've got a mixed, balanced place that can flourish. And we've got some fantastic schemes that have been delivered across the city centre itself. We talk about Paradise a lot, you know that. You know that we put the building blocks in place for Smithfields, and there are many, many, many others. So where do we think we face into, what do we face into now as we're starting to prepare that next iteration of a Birmingham plan? We'll get onto the Our Future City Plan in a minute. So we've just started the issues and options. For those of you that like planning, we've just started the issues and options piece of the next round of the plan. There's some really, really sharp challenges in that we need to face into as a city as a whole. The demand through the planning system for more homes will be quite acute. So 7,000 homes a year. I don't know, what does that feel like? That sounds like a pretty big number to me that the city has to find somewhere in the city area for new homes. We do have an acute issue with affordable housing in the city. It's one of my priorities as a strategic director. I'm a relative newcomer to the city, joined in January. It's clear that we lose a lot of affordable housing in the city to Right to Buy, for example. It's clear that the housing association sector and Birmingham City Council need to double, treble, quadruple their efforts actually to get anywhere close to meeting the demand for affordable housing. And we've been putting in place some really good plans to ensure that's going to happen. Big priority for us. We've declared a climate emergency. We did that 3 years ago. We said we'll be net zero as a city, not as a council, as a city, by 2030, brackets, or as close as we can get to it. Very ambitious plans, requires a completely different mindset, both within the City Council, but also in the partnerships that we form and the partnerships that we choose to get going. We need to think about those land uses in the city centre. We haven't bounced back yet from COVID. It'd be interesting when we get into Q&As to think about how you perceive that. It's really, from us as a big employer, we've seen the pattern shifting week by week, almost throughout the year. We're nowhere near getting to a settled state post-COVID in terms of thinking about working patterns and so on. But we do, at its very heart, have some problems which are just unacceptable in the 21st century. So, serious point. We're going to hit some great inspiration in a moment. But, you know, we do have those health inequalities. There are 10 years difference in life expectancy between different parts of the city. That's not really on, is it, in the 21st century? We know we've got access, very different access to employment and education opportunities across the city. And we know that we've got real poverty in places. So, our job as a City Council is to provide plans and a framework, everything, all the right conditions to support you and the sector to create, yes, a more beautiful place, and yes, a more sustainable place, but also a more equitable place. And that's at the heart of everything that we're putting together. So I'm quickly going to just run through Our Future City Plan. I'm going to go pretty quick through this stuff. So the big city plan that you'll recall, those of you who are obviously know Birmingham long, focus very much on the city centre itself. The Our Future City Plan is expanding that sort of spatial framework. So the Birmingham Development Plan covers the whole of the city area, the administrative boundary. The Our Future City Plan is really just the core central area. It needs to respond to net zero, needs to promote those major schemes, needs to raise the ambition of place making, and we need to shape the Birmingham Development Plan. Now, we're well into this process and you'll have been engaged in it. So in 2021, we started a consultation. We've been engaging with businesses and residents alike, trying to understand actually what people want from the place, where the opportunities are, and so on. And we've got a consultant team who are working hard. We hope to launch the Our Future City Plan in about April, something like that next year. So we're right at the business end of producing this. And it's a really important document. At its very heart, it's got 4 great big pillars. We've got to make it more inclusive. That's my equitable point earlier around development. We've got to make sure that we've got a creative economy here and we're thinking about that beautiful place that we've got, embrace technology. Connectivity is really important. Some of you will have read the transport plan. Congratulations to those of you that have read the transport plan. I know at least 2 people here have. It's really ambitious about ensuring a modal shift for the city centre and taking the policy action that we took collectively with the Clean Air Zone to the next layer. We're really serious about this, really serious about creating a core city centre which is much more pleasant and healthy for people to experience. And we've got to be resilient to both climate change and changes in the economy. So, we've got some 6 quick principles. I'm just going to really whiz through this really quickly. Growth for all. So, I've just mentioned this. So we're moving from the core city centre outside of the ring road, thinking about central renewal areas. So linking in the city centre with some of those neighbourhoods that we've been working on. The central renewal areas look something like that. All of this information is in the public domain, by the way, and actually we're quite happy to share these slides to attendees post the event. So you can see those there. I'm not going to run through them. Some transport connectivity there. As we allow people to drive into the city centre, we'll make it very difficult for people to drive then between different parts of the city centre. So okay to drive in, we're trying to discourage that as well, but within the actual city centre, we're really trying to discourage massively. City of Nature, we've got a fantastic range of opportunities. We know we've got the waterways. We know in the past, for all sorts of reasons, we've not necessarily made the most of those natural assets. So a key tenet of the Our Future City Plan is making sure that we're being very specific about those areas where we can encourage fantastic development in and around those pieces. But that also includes things like food strategy, sustainable food strategy, the Brummie urban forest and initiatives like that. So it's a really rich document. There's a spatial element to it, but actually the stuff around it is the stuff that's really interesting. So I do urge you to go on, check it out, have a look at it, and engage with us over the next few months. City of Centres recognises obviously that there's more than just the city centre itself, and it's important to make sure that we've got neighbourhood centres which are flourishing. This is touching on the concept of 15-minute cities, the idea that you can get to things you need very quickly and sustainably, and making sure that we're not just putting everything into the middle. And then City of Connections obviously starts to touch on many of the themes I've already referred to there, around discouraging car use, investing in public transport, investing in cycleway infrastructure and so on. So some really laudable stuff here. You'd expect us to say all this, but I hope you've seen from the Big City Plan, for example, and other pieces of work we've done, that actually with a strong framework, and especially at times where the economy falters and where things are uncertain, a strong framework that enables other people to come in and fill that space creatively. And then the City of Knowledge and Innovation recognises that we've got a really rich higher education, further education sector, and actually the business benefits that come from supporting them. So the Knowledge Quarter, for example, over beyond Millennium Point is a really important area of focus for us through the Our Future City Plan, part of our economic development strategy. And then the final one, really, and this is where the point around joy comes in, is the City of Layers, which talks about City of Sport, the Birmingham story, heritage, culture and creative zones, and cultural destinations. So making sure that we're putting this stuff on an equal footing with everything else around economic development and connectivity, and we're making sure that we've got joy in the city for people to flourish and enjoy. So I would urge you to engage with the Our Future City Plan process. It's been really good to be part of it for the past 10 months or so. It's looking good, it's looking strong. I've got every confidence that it'll be just what the city needs to provide that framework and space for you all to do your thing, which I think is our role in the development of the city. But it does need your final input, so please do engage either with me afterwards through Q&As or online. Okay, so thank you. That's all from me. Now, we're going to hear from your peers in the profession, and I'm going to introduce all four of them at once to start with. Okay, so I will read from this. But it's important that you understand who's speaking this evening. So Anna's going to be first, Anna Parker. Anna, maybe you can just give everybody a quick wave. Anna is founding director of Intervention Architecture, a RIBA chartered architect leading the studio in Birmingham, working with local artists and arts organisations. Anna has developed an interdisciplinary way of working, which provides a holistic design approach for projects working across fields of design, interiors, furniture, temporary structures, exhibitions, events, lighting, homes, and mixed-use developments. Anna has been commended numerous times, having been shortlisted for UK Construction Week Role Model, a National RIBA Rising Star, the Birmingham Post Business Entrepreneur of the Year, listed within the Midlands Top 50 Entrepreneurs Insider, and nominated as a finalist for Birmingham's Young Professional of the Year. Anna, did you write this yourself? And Anna also sits on the Birmingham City Council Design and Conservation Review Panel as a core member and is a trustee of the board of Birmingham Big Art Foundation. Now, I think for that we should just give Anna a welcome, so well done. Maybe we can award points for the introductions. So, Alex, welcome. Alex Slatter. Alex is an associated architect, having started at the practice in 2017 as a Part 2 graduate. She undertook her architectural training at the University of Kent, University of Liverpool, and then latterly at Birmingham City University. Alex has worked across multiple sectors, predominantly on commercial and education projects, and she has considerable experience in the refurbishment and conversion of commercial buildings, with extensive involvement in mixed-use commercial, residential and luxury residential developments. As the current chair of the British Council for Offices BCO Next Gen Committee for Midlands and East Anglia, Alex has led BCO tours on numerous projects. She acts on behalf of Associated Architects on the RIBA Future Architects Mentoring Scheme and sits on the practice's CSR Committee. Not bad introduction either, so welcome. And next up, Dav Bansal. Dav has been with Glenhouse Architects since 1999 and became a partner in 2015. He leads the Birmingham studio and oversees the design of major urban regen projects, including the delivery of Birmingham's Paradise development in the Civic Heart, which we will be hearing more about shortly. Dav's definitely written this one. As well as New Garden Square in the west end of the city, along with the Curzon HS2 and Martineau Galleries master plans to the east. Dav is driven by passion for developing regional towns and cities to meet their potential and ensure they play their role in the UK, promoting healthy environments, active movement and quality of place. His integrity of exploring ideas to make places for landscaping and buildings is considered both at macro and micro scales. He regularly sits on RIBA award panels, including the national awards, international awards and Sterling Prize shortlisting, as well as RIBA judge for the Housing Design Awards. In his voluntary capacity, he is on the board for B Music Design Midlands, and Open City, and is an advocate for the NSPCC charity. Welcome, Dav. And hopefully we have Alessandro. He's not going to appear there, don't worry. Alexandra on the line should be able to hear us. So Alexandra is a senior architect at David Cohn Architects and leads the studio's master planning and development team. David Cohn Architects works internationally on arts, education and residential projects, specialising in interdisciplinary collaboration. Alexandra has over 10 years' experience delivering large-scale, complex civic and public realm projects, and his current projects include Birmingham Smithfield Market and the Greenwich Design District. So if Alexandra can hear us, welcome Alexandra. Maybe just Alexandra a warm welcome too. So thank you. So, hey, fantastic. Thank you, Alessandro. So I'm going to hand over to Anna now, and then we're going to hear from each person in turn, then we'll open it up for a few questions from the audience. So have those questions ready. Anna, over to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you, RIBA and VitrA, for inviting me to take part this evening. I'm Anna. I'm the Director and Founder of Intervention Architecture. We are a local multidisciplinary practice based in Digbeth. Our work is led by a social engagement process, and this evening I'd like to share with you projects and kind of client groups which we have worked with within Birmingham, all of which the design process has been led by community consultation. And so I'll be sharing a range of temporary and changeable projects and also reusing existing spaces in a playful and creative way. So I thought I'd just introduce, first of all, thinking about the idea of small projects. So I'll be kind of focusing on the smaller scale, I suppose, of architecture as a speaker this evening. So small to us as a practice is so much. So, it can be temporary structures. We have to be really aware of budgets, and especially when they're so small, and the challenge that brings. My perception of small may be very different to yours. So there's that kind of challenge in kind of relationships and the way in which that we communicate our visions. They're flexible and can be strategic. So if small can be all of those things, then actually to us, small has a big impact. And we like to create our small spaces and architectures with confidence and to sort of really achieve our vision. So this is my IA family. Some of them are here this evening. We are a young team with energy and drive for high quality design, and we design in a very holistic way. So we work across all aspects of kind of the design spectrum, from joinery and furniture through to sort of installations, temporary. And yeah, I actually was talking about my team in RIBA London yesterday, and how each of them have a superpower that they each bring to the team and to the studio culture here in Birmingham. And so the first project I'd like to talk with you is Pavilion Babs, and this is part of a sort of collaborative group that we formed with Arup locally, where it's an engagement project where we work with children from really sort of challenging, deprived backgrounds within the city. So we work with around 42 Birmingham schools, particularly also closely with the Access project, so that we can provide insights into careers in the built environment and construction through children designing and making temporary structures and pavilions with us. And through that, they also have a kind of link to the sort of changing nature of and the impact that design can have within our city. So we do that through a series of kind of weekend workshops. We provide the children with a site and a brief. This one, for example, was outside Curzon Station, so we could have conversations about what HS2 means within Birmingham. And then a design is selected and then detailed by our team and built also by us as kind of self-builds. And really, our hope is to kind of facilitate their learning and to encourage them to sort of join the built environment and connect to their city and make positive change. So we built within our studio using CNC fabrication methods this dry jointed interlocking grid shell structure using kind of parametric design tools. So actually, even though this was entirely volunteering our own time, we got to sort of test and research lots of methods which have been really beneficial as kind of young designers. It's also enabled us to collaborate with some real kind of interesting team specialists and makers locally, and we've been able to offer some of the children work experience and links to apprenticeships within the city as well. And I'll just play a small video of the pavilion when we built it was used as a performance space for the Weekender Festival. So it had kind of quite interesting acoustic effect that was a happy accident actually in the design process. The next project is part of a kind of long-term collaboration that we kind of work with local artists as part of Grand Union. They're our peers in the Birmingham art scene, and Ways of Learning was a sort of 3-month project where we created a flexible, shifting, modular construction to house artists' films, co-working space, and for different kind of events that were held locally. And this really introduced the themes of kind of flexibility in design at any scale. Here we were building upon our CNC fabrication knowledge, we were using kind of flat pack construction to create these individual bays, which when connected together create a variety of kind of zoning, and also recycled material in sort of reconstituted foam. And it also kind of explored adaptability within the design, where it had a kind of evening change of use to be a kind of DJ set rave, which also allowed us to celebrate queer culture within the city with it In the Pink event. And we did queer pickling in the mobile kitchen and sort of several different talks and events. This project also allowed us to connect with other cities, so the legacy of this one structure has moved up to the Baltic in Newcastle. It's also been used in a new feminist space in Nottingham, and on the end there, the New Art Exchange. So it's this kind of really organic, adaptive reuse of just one kind of joinery type of design. This is Erdington Baths. So we really delighted to be selected on this project. We've been working on it for about 2 years now. So it's a Victorian baths in the heart of Erdington Centre, and it was a redundant council site and lay empty for the last kind of 15 years as a new swimming baths was built locally, and the site remained kind of vacant. And we've been working with Whitton Lodge Community Association, who are a kind of amazing team of people who had a vision to kind of create new uses within the building space. So we set about kind of extensive community consultation and local business consultation to really understand the opportunities for growth and what this building could be reused for. So we linked with, I've gone 1 too forward, I think now. We linked with a lot of the kind of local creatives to really understand kind of how this project could be a kind of creative enterprise space that served the local kind of needs of businesses and artists. We've set really kind of ambitious zero carbon targets for it, and it's now going to be starting on site. We've got planning approval for this to be a mix of creative workspace, artist studios. We're reusing the existing kind of pool structure to create different tiers of creative workspace. It's also going to include a community garden, a creche, outdoor play areas and street food. And these are some images of the main internal pool space where we're really kind of using the way that the kind of grade of the pool and existing ground line has allowed us to create levels of storage, studios and mezzanine, and then this kind of outdoor street food. And then finally, this has been a really fantastic project for us all over this kind of last summer. We were commissioned by Birmingham Cathedral with Arts and Heritage, supported by Birmingham 2022, to encourage well-being within the city by creating a structure. So our site was Pigeon Park, which is now a kind of maker's Christmas market in construction. But we created a table really to focus, be at the heart of a kind of social activity throughout the games and throughout the summer. So we carried out engagement on many levels. We did a kind of open public consultation. We also then kind of engaged in more focused ways with the cathedral staff and in particular worked with people experiencing homelessness and Let's Feed Brum. And it was a really humbling experience, and we really let them lead the design evolution, making decisions on things like colour, whether there would be kind of particular elements of the sort of storage that we use for then kind of book exchange and performances. And so we started to develop ideas around kind of environmentally led design using all natural materials. So we created a surface-mounted structure, which was also a source of growth. So it had kind of edible plants that would grow at the centre of each modular bay within the table. And the plants were fed by water collected via a chain link, as water kind of is collected along the top canopy. And we also reused materials with railway sleepers as this kind of anchoring weight to the whole structure, and created this kind of soft communal arching shape of the table. The project's had a really interesting legacy, as each bay has now been gifted to local community groups. And I just thought I'd end by just thinking back to how amazing the games was for Birmingham over the summer. And this is a kind of stop motion walk from sort of Dav's site at Paradise through the city centre. And we were really excited to be part of one of the really colourful, vibrant interventions which just injected so much life into the city in a really kind of new way that we haven't seen before. And we think that's a real moment for Birmingham to build upon. Thank you.
Hello everybody, and thanks for having me this evening. So I'm going to change the scale of development a bit from what Anna was talking about, and moving on to more medium-sized development within the Birmingham City Centre. So later on, Dav and Alexandra will be speaking about how to redesign complex sites and regenerate urban spaces within the city. Redevelopment, which is vital to Birmingham's big city plan's core pillars, to improve connectivity to the city, grow economically and embrace cultural diversity, and support opportunities for innovation. With that, the city core can evolve. However, what happens to our existing building stock? Buildings that were built 20, 30, 50 years ago, buildings that aren't necessarily listed, but are pocket sites within the existing city centre core. Buildings that now are unfortunately falling short of design standards and aspirations today. Buildings that don't encompass the health and well-being of occupants, and that aren't designed with inclusivity in mind, and that don't engage with their surrounding communities. And even more importantly, are built with a building fabric and MEP solutions, resulting in buildings operating to poor standards. The UK government announced that we would be net zero by 2050. From a numerical perspective, approximately 40% of the UK's emissions are attributable to the built environment, with construction, demolition and excavation activities generating approximately 60% of the UK's waste. As an industry, we are well aware, or should be, that all new builds need to consider this when we are designing these buildings, that we need to reduce the energy demand and construct from low carbon materials and promote a circular economy whilst also engaging in communities. But by 2050, 80% of the buildings that will exist already exist. So it's all well and good focusing on the 20% of new builds, but what happens to the remaining 80%, our existing building stock? How do we get them to meet the government's targets of being net zero by 2050, whilst also making them attractable to occupiers so that they stand a chance of competing against new builds within the market and ultimately standing the test of time? So I'd like to talk to you this evening about the challenges and rewards when it comes to repurposing and refurbishing our existing building stock. So this project here, I'm going to use one building as a case study. And this is 19 Cornwall Street, which is an office building built in the early 90s in the centre of the Cornwall Business District. Prominent tenants such as PwC, Pinson Mason and Kia Property previously occupied the building. The client brief that we were given here was to reinvent and refresh 19 Cornwall Street so that through its design brand and shift the perception of the building and fundamentally reposition it within the current market so it can compete against its other office buildings around. The design strongly focuses on reducing energy consumption as part of our brief as well. So therefore, to achieve this, there has been a strong emphasis on occupier amenity wellness and creating a building which is net zero in operation. At the end of stage 4, the building energy use is set to be 65% lower than a typical building regulations compliant building. There are many things to consider when designing for a low carbon building and good design, and that encourages community engagement. But today I'll be focusing on 3 themes that we considered with the refurbishment of 19 Cornwall Street. Firstly, reducing and limiting the whole life carbon of the building. Then monitoring the outlets of the building and how to educate building users, and then creating a healthy building for occupants. We started with a fabric first approach. So we minimised the demolition and demolition of the existing building and maximised the existing building envelope to achieve good airtightness and minimise thermal bridging. So we concentrated on the Cornwall Street facade rather than the Great Charles Queensway, which is the main facade and people relate the building entrance to. We made sure that we stuck to LETI guidelines of keeping the glazing ratios down to below 40%, and then used mixed mode ventilation, so keeping the openable windows, along with going all electric for all of the MEP solutions inside. A responsible approach has been taken with the building specification too. With the external facade, instead of using, say, aluminium panels, we've been keen to use cement fibre panels from an embodied carbon point of view, reducing the loads on the building so that we're not having to put additional secondary steel in, and then considering end of life of these materials too. So, for instance, specifying lime mortar instead of your regular mortar so that at the end of the life, eventually, of the building, those bricks can be reused. We've limited the quantities of the materials and finishes internally also. So we've exposed the concrete frame and minimised the wall linings and ceiling finishes of the building. This also exposes the thermal mass and creates a more sustainable building. We've gone for an exposed M&E solution, so the ceilings within the space. So using only 30% of the floor plate would have ceilings in, which again, from a fit-out point of view, when a tenant's coming in, they're going to do their own thing anyway. So they're going to, if you put a ceiling hole in, they could be taking it out, which would create more wastage. We've then used low carbon materials that are locally sourced. For instance, the reception desk has been made from a Fresco worktop, which is made from recycled wood and manufactured here in Birmingham. So again, it's making sure that the whole life carbon of that process is followed throughout. Specifying wall tiles that had a minimum of a 40% recycled content, and floor tiles also. Where possible, we've... Okay. With the raised access floor, instead of putting a brand new raised access floor in, which is what people expect when they're going around buildings, we've specified a recycled raised access floor, so it's less shiny and less new. However, by putting this design change in, just to quantify it, we've saved the amount of carbon that would be required to construct 7 new build 3-bed houses. Adopting circular design principles like these has resulted in the embodied carbon impact of the building being around 75% lower than a typical new build office. So then it comes down, okay, so the next point that I'd like to talk to you about is the smart technologies that we've input into the buildings. As designers, we can do our best to design a building that is as sustainable as possible up until the point of handover. However, unregulated energy from occupants can account to 50% of a building's total energy use. And so there needs to be a fundamental change in the way we manage and the way we behave in buildings if we are going to make a lasting difference. As professionals in the sector, it's our responsibility to be educating our clients and building users. We're addressing this at 19 Cornwall Street by creating a building handbook and tenant fit-out guide to help educate tenants. There'll be green leases which will impose certain obligations on the tenants to buy into the building's net zero carbon objectives. And with the implementation of smart technologies, we can make people aware of the impact of their decisions. Turning up the heating, turning up the air conditioning, etc., leaving the lights on. It's all going to be openly displayed within the building, within screens, so that people can be aware of their actions, in the hope that this engages with users and raises their awareness. We're all for being more sustainable at home. I know, for instance, I've refrained from putting the heating on by putting a lot more jumpers in the past. And that's what we need to encompass in with all buildings that we use. Not saying there's no heating in there. So thirdly, how do we further integrate our buildings into our communities, office buildings for instance? So we create a people-focused design. We use behavioural nudges to encourage healthy actions. So at 19 Cornwall Street, we've positioned the cycle store at the ground floor and with visible links through within the reception space. Traditionally, it may have been hidden away back in the basement, and because this is prime net lettable area that the building owner could make money on. However, we've realised the importance of promoting sustainable transport methods and promoting a sustainable lifestyle for the people in the communities. We've prioritised quality design, and we know that people want natural light and legible routes through and quality materials to feel comfortable. So using the softness of the wood, using the recycled acoustic panelling to just soften the whole space rather than just being a harsh environment. Then creating a community. So again, like with the cycle store or even the studio space that we've got at the back, which is a multifunctional space, the atrium could have been sold up as net lettable area again. However, having this open large space with the what are they called? The barriers to get through, turnstiles, near the lift lobbies means that this is more of a communal space and occupiers can engage with other occupiers within the multi-tenanted building. We've also then taken a conscious decision to not put necessarily a cafe area in here to then promote engaging with local independent coffee shops and restaurants around and create more of a local environment for people to get involved with. So this, I've only spoken about an office building, but this could be, these kind of thought processes could be put into our existing, our existing residential towers. You can tell I've lost my brain now. It can be put into all forms of commercial use. And from my experience, reuse is inherently less straightforward than demolishing a building and starting from scratch. However, I'm hopeful that I'm talking to you today and showing you that refurbishment is important to our existing, our city and our existing building stock. And with precedents like 19 Cornwall Street, other projects that I've worked on, and I'm sure Dav and Anna have worked on too, will hopefully will show you that existing buildings can compete with new builds and contribute to a more sustainable future. We stand to gain a unique product, embodied carbon savings and a positive social impact. Think about some of the landmark buildings in Birmingham City Centre today that we have a big question mark over its future, such as the Rackham's building and John Lewis, or the mailbox where BBC used to be. As an industry, talking to my colleagues and peers and everyone in this room, we require more demonstrations of successful and profitable refurbishments to help enable others to follow suit with confidence within all sectors. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and it's great to see you all here this evening. And I think after a very busy summer with the Commonwealth Games, which Anna beautifully sort of filmed going through the sort of Chamberlain Square, I think we're all very excited about the future of this fabulous city and the sort of building on that energy and that momentum. So to tell you my story of Paradise, I thought it would be helpful to set some background and context to the new Paradise that we all see and hopefully enjoy today. It all began about 150 years ago when the mayor of the city and the social reformist Joseph Chamberlain brought out the utility companies to improve the quality of water and gas supply. And in the interest of the public health and the cleansing of the town, you could argue that this was Chamberlain's response to their pandemic at that point. So it's quite ironic that that this sort of circle of sort of pandemics and epidemics do seem to happen. He then went on to clearing the slums and transforming the Birmingham from an industrial market town into a municipal city with a notable civic centre and a commerce-led regeneration. So Birmingham was already looking forward and championing its civic values. And Chamberlain Square, as you can see here, was remodelled in the 1880s with the museum, the library and other institutes that joined the town hall to wrap around this new civic space. It was not until the 1960s when this was being dismantled by the city's engineer, Herbert Manzoni, because at that time, car was king. And we were the world's leading manufacturers in this industry. So he went about designing a city that prioritised cars over people and demolished much of our heritage. I mean, in some way, we should count ourselves lucky that the town hall was not in his way. So post-war architect John Maiden then followed this ambition through with his vision to reshape Paradise as a multi-level interchange destination. But only a fraction of that vision was ever realised, and the rest became a bit of a piecemeal disaster, resulting over time in becoming literally a big roundabout with a barrier to pedestrians from the west and the north. And you can sort of see that sort of collection of crashes and clashes that sort of happened around there. But fast forward to the 21st century, and it was clear at the start of this century that the population of the region was growing at a rapid pace. And though we were predicting growth in many other areas of Birmingham, we had a city core that was strangled and bottlenecked by the highways. And consequently, we were losing out on development opportunities to attract new businesses, investments, and ultimately creating more jobs. Hence, we worked with the city, with Birmingham City Council, to launch their big city plan in 2011. And that set out a clear vision for unlocking the imposed city boundary and expanding beyond the inner ring road. This was helping everyone to join and share a common, clear vision, and most important, kickstart public sector investment early on. In doing so, we were able to explore a more compact, sustainable led city core with safe and attractive public realm, and starting to prioritise pedestrians over cars, as well as an integrated network of transport modes from walking, cycling to the metro. And you may also remember that there was a clear vision for movement and a sequence of infrastructure projects like the upgraded New Street Station, this new Birmingham Library that we're sitting in today, and also the repurposed Centenary Square, along with the metro extension to the west. Now, although it took many years, and I'm sure it caused a lot of disruption for us all that we all experienced, it did really transform the city from being a sort of a car-dominated city to being a people's city. And at the same time, in the West End, Paradise was one of the 5 transformation areas that was identified for redevelopment to break down what we called the concrete collar. And ultimately, this was about repairing and reshaping a pivotal piece of the city's fabric to optimise development through densification, but together with safe, connected urban realm and modern workplaces. And this was to either attract the expansion of existing businesses in our city or to bring new regional headquarters into the city. So it was a strategic framework that had a purpose to help deliver, number 1, economic growth for the city and its growing population. 2, safe, connected public realm for active travel and social and sustainable benefits. And 3, creating jobs in professional sectors to retain the best talent that this city can offer. Now, starting with the site, it was heavily constrained with highways sitting all around it and under it as well as existing services. We also had to cope with 30,000 people walking through Paradise in a day, and also keeping the site in full operation with about 80,000 cars travelling under it through the tunnel. So it was a very lively and very active site that we had to deal with. And this strategic site was a pivotal site with a pressure valve. It was more like a pressure valve in the city centre, and therefore needed releasing to enable growth and expansion of the city, but more importantly, pedestrian cyclist movement in a legible and a structured way. And not forgetting that this was also the very prime objective of the big city plan as well. So we were working with the city to build on its long-term vision. And you can sort of see some of these pictures here that show the sort of underpasses, the bottlenecks, the barriers, and a real sort of complexity of people moving around convoluted ways, with cars being separated from people and just being a very sort of fragmented piece of the city's fabric. And a key and challenging part, if I go back to there, a key and challenging part of its transformation early on was that the removal of the eastern gyratory. And this was the eastern part of the big roundabout. And by rationalising the traffic movement and reducing the car movement, we were able to reinstate the setting of a town hall with a new pedestrian thoroughfare, historically known as the Ratcliffe Place. And you can sort of see this as a visual of how that would look like when the number 3 Chamberlain Square is built, and that connection from the metro going up to Chamberlain Square. So you can see that piece of restoration. It also reinstated some historic thoroughfares, and in addition created new public spaces with people, connectivity, and a setting of our heritage assets in mind. It helped to define streets, squares and edges, as well as connecting the city's 2 most important historic squares, where the civic setting around Chamberlain Square and now meets the cultural hub around Centenary Square. So connecting those historical squares and adding more public space was the real sort of approach underpinning the sort of master plan. The master plan was also, and you can sort of see just the sort of master plan with the sort of main squares going from Victoria, Chamberlain to Centenary Square, and that connection was really important to create that legibility and structured movement around the city. The master plan was also about looking outwards, as this is where the true success of unlocking this part of the city would come from. As much as the interconnectivity of streets and squares was important, the connections to other parts of the city were equally, if not more, crucial. In some cases, this was reconnecting, but in most cases, it was about new connections and supporting further opportunities beyond Paradise. And that's where the success comes from, about growing the city. So turning our back to any potential expansion of the city was not a choice for us. So connecting to the west, it opened up to Centenary Square and beyond to Five Ways. To the east, as an expansion of the Central Business District and Victoria Square. To the north, with a new level crossing over to the University campus and the Jewellery Quarter. And then to the south, where the eastern gyratory has now been removed, has now connected to the metro stand and down towards New Street Station. But part of his master plans is also about the phasing. And this was absolutely key to delivering a master plan, so it didn't feel like a construction site as we deliver this over 2 decades. And also making sure that the best quality public realm came in early rather than at the very end. So it was a bit like what I call open heart surgery, where we're sort of releasing and managing footfall as well as activating frontages as each piece of public realm came forward. So Paradise is established in 3 key phases, with the first phase now completed, which many of you have hopefully experienced and enjoyed, and redefining a much improved St Chamberlain Square, with the new east-west connection being Centenary Way, and also defined by the 2 new commercial buildings, number 1 and number 2 Chamberlain Square, as you can see highlighted in red. Oh, sorry. The second phase, which is currently under construction and to be completed by 2025, defines the eastern edge of Centenary Square, with number 1 Centenary Way, which is now up and hopefully delivered by the end of this year, with the tenants moving in middle of next year. That defines the eastern edge of Centenary Square. Delivers 2 new public spaces to the south, Ratcliffe Square and the Western Terrace out towards Alpha Square. And also restores the tree-lined Paradise Street with the new metro extension. On the very northern tip is earmarked with the distinct octagon tower there. And then phase 3, ultimately, marked in the yellow here, infills the rest and adds the final piece of public realm with the northern Congreve Square. That becomes a soft landscape dwell space, all planned for completion by the end of his golden decade. So a 15-year master plan in the making. And the best collection of Victorian civic buildings outside London, as I've been told, once hid amongst a jungle of concrete structures, is now finally being open to vistas and a civic setting that they truly deserve. In some way, the granularity and the purpose of his civic heart, once visioned by Joseph Chamberlain, is being restored with people and public spaces. So this is where I believe Birmingham has learned from its past to celebrate its heritage, but move forward with ambition and audacity. With the master plan principles and design codes defined, spaces, scale, materiality, we went about with the design competitions to select our collaborative partners. And working with Grants Associates on the landscaping, Eric Parry Architects on number 1 Chamberlain Square as part of the first phase. For phase 2, we are partnering with Field and Clegg Bradley Studios, who will be delivering number 3 Chamberlain Square, and partner with Ian Springford on a boutique hotel design that we are delivering as part of the phase 2. Now, this collaborative approach encourages the creativity of ideas and pushes the individuality of buildings, and that's really important that a master plan needs to bring together. Of course, we were also involved with designing buildings ourselves. We're not going to miss that chance. So for the first phase, 2 Chamberlain Square is a delicate backdrop to its surrounding heritage and to the Chamberlain Memorial. The tall portico with its 7 sort of equal bays reflecting the heritage and the reconstituted stone palette material honours its historic neighbours, but with a contemporary interpretation. On phase 2, number 1 Centenary Way completes the Centenary Square, spanning over the A38 tunnel. And this black steel exoskeleton is a naked structure that becomes its strikingly clear architectural expression. So it's working very hard that none of its buildings overclad with materials that otherwise would be seen as more embodied carbon and wastage. And the architectural expression and the structure also shades the facade, so it has an environmental benefit to it as well. And will also be soon be home to the engineers who designed this Arups, as well as they return to the city with a strong 800+ workforce. The flexibility of his master plan also allowed us to add new uses to the mix. And though it remains commercially led, the later introduction of high-rise living offer known as the Octagon has brought widely further variety to this mixed-use development. And as I've been told, this is the first of its kind in the world. So we're doing something quite innovative here in terms of providing homes that have got aspects probably twice as wide as you would probably find in any conventional residential scheme. So it is breaking many grounds in that. And though each building is unique, they form part of a collective family that complements their heritage neighbours, contributes to civic quality and the character of the space. And the range of ground floor uses amongst entrance foyers, generous porticos, spill out spaces all help to animate and populate the new public realm. And here are some befores and afters of how this transformation has been taking shape since the demolition of the site back in 2014. So Chamberlain Square before, Chamberlain Square today. Chamberlain Square before, today. The view from looking east from Centenary Square as you come over the bridge, and today, looking straight into Chamberlain Square, that connectivity, that legibility, and that view of our, very sort of loved clock tower. Being in the library, looking west out towards Centenary Square before, and what it will look like by the end of this year, early next year, with that view of that the memorial and beyond to the Symphony Hall. And despite the pandemic and the initial reluctance to return to the office, this transformation has also attracted a huge commercial success to date with the best-in-class businesses like PwC, Goldman Sachs, Arabs and DLA Piper, to name a few, who have moved here to attract and retain the best talent that Birmingham can offer. And when completed by the end of its city's golden decade, it will provide up to 2 million square foot of workspace, in addition to homes, leisure and retail uses, all generating up to 12,000 new jobs. The ground floor occupiers are equally, if not more important, and have been carefully selected to help animate and expand the city's F&B offer, seeking to reflect a world-class multicultural cuisine. And there's still lots more to come with experiential dining, so do keep an eye out on the new announcements that will be happening soon. But look, I do truly believe this transformation from a dysfunctional, I believe, embarrassing piece of a city to now being regarded as an international, Instagrammable destination, as I've been told, has restored the city's belief and its confidence. And once regarded as a workshop of the world and a city of 1,000 trades. So Birmingham is not afraid of grafting, working hard to regain its global importance. And on that front, we are continuing to work with the Birmingham City Council to go beyond the objectives of the big city plan. And that has served its purpose over the last decade. And as Paul mentioned earlier, the sequel to the big city plan, the Future City Plan Initiative, is now well underway and looking to unlock further potential beyond the Middle Ring Road to neighbouring local centres and communities with a vision for the next 20 years. So guiding the city to finally deliver on its 800 hectares of opportunities, connected with multiple centres and 15-minute neighbourhoods. And just like Anna, finally, I will leave you with a picture I took during the recent games, which gives me absolute pride and reassurance in why we do this. That is to enrich the quality of people's lives and create a lasting legacy for our future generations, so we do leave this city in a far, far better shape than when we found it. So let's be brave, let's be bold, and let's be Birmingham. Thank you.
So probably I should start with an apology. I couldn't make to Birmingham today due to the train disruptions, but thanks to the RIBA and Birmingham City Council to set it up, the online connection, so I'm able to present the project I've been working on as senior architects the last year, so I can start now. So you should just start with, we are very excited to be part of this moment of transformation in Birmingham. We have won the competition in 2018, and we started in September 2021 to work on the RIBA stage 1 and 2 and the planning application of the new market in the Bull Ring. Markets are public spaces to their full extent. There is an element of theatricality which celebrates everyday life, and the Bull Ring market is a perfect example of that. Yesterday and today, the space, to quote Gavin Wade from Eastside Project, has a different kind of magic, which we hope that the new market will recognize and amplify. This is a slide showing the competition board we have submitted in 2018, which I think is still current to the project. In fact, rather than showing a building proposal, it shows a space full of life, which celebrates diversity and speaks to many people. And we hope that our proposal will have that character. So how we do that? We have based our design on collaboration. Birmingham has a rich history of collaboration. The coat of arms of the city has an artist and an engineer that work together. So it's really built into the DNA of the city. We brought together, since the competition stage, a diverse group of designers, engineers, and specialists that go from landscape architect to market operator, market designers, an art organization, Eastside Projects, which is based in Big Beth. And the idea was to work on what we call the charrette method. Charrette stands for market cart in Old French, but in architectural schools represents an intense period of collaboration amongst different disciplines. And the result is, rather than being a building, is a piece of city which combines the different elements together, or what we call it joyful convergence. The site, as you know, is in the Burring area, which currently there is the existing market occupies 3 different areas, 2 of which are indoor, and then the open market is outdoor. So the fish and meat is on the indoor market, and there is the rug market and the fruit and vegetables in outdoor. The new site is adjacent to the existing site, and the idea is to combine the markets under one roof, and I will have a diagram showing that later in the presentation. Through the research we've done beginning of the project, we have discovered the site was originally occupied by the first Lord of Birmingham, and the site included a manor house and a moat, which was at the time outside the city walls. And as you can see on the top right is the St. Martin Church, which was there already in the Middle Age. This archaeology has been part of our design proposal. The idea is to celebrate the history of the site through some artwork. And then the city developed and expanded, and these are photos from the 1930s showing the bull ring on the north side, and then the site which is sitting on the south of the St. Martin Church, which was occupied by the market hall. The north part of the site, the bull ring, was heavily bombed during the Second World War, and on the south, at the south of the St. Martin Church, was redeveloped during the 60s to make space for the inner ring road, as you've seen in the previous presentation about Paradise Square. And this is how the site look today. Is a big space which has been used for event, was used for the Commonwealth Games in the summer. But the first time I was in the site, it was quite clear the contrast between the north part of the market, the bull ring, which is a successful mixed-use development, and then this sort of emptiness of the site, which was occupied by the wholesale market until 2018, when it was demolished and relocated outside Birmingham. To say this was mentioned earlier on, the site is part of a bigger master plan led by Price and Partners to get client land lease, and the master plan aims to reestablish the dense network of street and city fabric, which was destroyed in the 1960s, and put the market plot, which is highlighted in this slide in yellow, as the center of the master plan, facing St. Martin Church and creating a square called Market Square. And then on the south is a large space called Festival Square. So as you can see already from this master plan, it's a very public building with all very different conditions on the four edges of the site. As I said, the brief called for the markets to be combined in one building. So we will have the open market with fruit and vegetables in a very similar location where it sits now, so on the north side of the site. The rag market and the fish and meat market, indoor market, on both sides of the building. And then there's a new element, which is the food hall, which through our research and discussion with the market specialist, been clear that the food offer in markets have been very successful, helps the footfall and attract new customers. So the food hall will face Festival Square, and it will be triple height space with an urban farm. And on top of the building, there will be a public garden, which is accessible from Festival Square and accessible to the public. The market, so it will occupy the ground level. On top of it will be an office building, which is 7-story high above the second floor. And then there will be a smaller building on the north, which will have workshops connected to the market, and then an event space on the top level. In terms of team, as I said, we had a big team, 10 people. As you can imagine, market is not a very ordinary typology of design. So we have to prepare a brief with the client and with our design team. And I think we managed to do that thanks to all the consultants. East Side Projects, the local art organization, played an important role in that. I would say a fundamental role. They had two main roles. One was to create an art strategy for the project. The idea is, since the beginning, since the competition, was the artwork to be part of the fabric of the building, and to be part of the design of the building. And the idea is that artwork and the related signage aims to amplify the existing cultural and social ecology, and embed the heritage and cultures of Birmingham. Another role that Eastside Projects covered was to aid engagement with the existing traders and customers of the market. That started immediately as soon as we started stage 0 of the project, September last year, and went through different phases. We went from the shadowing phases, which seen the Eastside Project and us and the design team spending day with a storeholder in the markets, and to gather information and to talk to the traders to understand what is not working or what is working in the market, in the existing market, but also to understand what was their ambition for the future market. The shadowing followed with the installation of stalls in the 3 markets that ended in the spring, March 2022, and then followed with workshops with the traders early in the summer. So all this information was collected and shared with the design team, with the client on a weekly basis, and a lot of the issues really and the feedback we received from the traders helped to develop the design. On the same time, we carried out research on markets. We did quite a few visits across markets in the UK to understand or to see good and also bad markets, examples to understand what is a successful design and successful operation for a market. And this was translated in different, like the charrette, like intense meetings, and we used a variety of media to represent that. We used BIM, but then also model making that went from a small scale to explore the massing, but then also later on the facade. We had a model 1-50, which occupies the whole our meeting room here in the office. And this is the last slide, which shows a hand sketch of our proposal, which we are quite excited with. Is as you can see, the top part close to St. Martin Church has a canopy, which under is the open market of fruit and vegetable, and a building with the sawtooth, which has the workshops and the event space. And then further down, going down towards Festival Square, which is at the bottom of the drawing, is the fish and meat, and a section through the dining hall, which is a triple high space, and the urban farm, and on top of the dining hall, a representation of the landscape. And then on top of the market hall is this 2 offices, 2 buildings, which is one in plan, but it looks like 2 blocks, which have been shaped and located to not interrupt the views from the Bullring towards Festival Square and the rest of the master plan. So we are quite pleased that it's such a complex project responds to its context, and the different elements of the brief come together as a piece of city which celebrate diversity and Birmingham in general. Thank you.
All enjoyed that as much as I did. I'm going to do a few comments, I think, in a moment, just to summarise some of the fantastic pieces of inspiration, really, they've given us there in very different ways. This is one thing I like to do, and it's to finish on time, because you've all got places to go, to eat, to drink, to catch trains and so on. We were going to have a bit of a chinwag, but what I'm going to do is open it up actually to questions from the audience. We've got a few moments to take questions from you guys to any one of us or all of us, and they can be difficult questions, they can be playful questions, I don't really mind. But what we've seen there are some fantastic examples of Birmingham Grand talent at completely different sets of scales, so some really inspiring stuff. So let's open it up. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions before then we draw the evening to a close. Who would like to go first? Now, I know your profession and you're not known for shyness. You are being shy this evening. Was there? This is like an auction. If you move, if you move, you've bought. Right. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was just about to jump in, but thank you.
I'm not even part of the profession. I'm just an interested observer and somebody who lives in the JQ and who worked in the PwC building, 19 Cornwall Street. So just very interested and encouraged to see that buildings are now being redeveloped rather than demolished and then rebuilt. We have another building opposite us where we live in George Street, which is now being developed for UCB, their construction project. And I do sort of get the Dezeen Architects Digest via email just because I'm interested.
Yeah.
And I know there was an article there where the idea of not knocking down buildings, but re-establishing them and refurbishing them was such an important thing to do from a sustainable perspective. So I just really endorse that and very interested to see. I must try and get into that building and see what they've done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the penny has finally dropped, hasn't it? Both on residential buildings but also on commercial buildings, that sustainability-wise we're much better to try and find a new life. And in fact, if one of the things you could accuse Birmingham of has been a little bit too liberal with the demolition ball in the past and not thinking more about reinvention and reconfiguration. And actually we have a very large initiative at the City Council, along with Coventry and Wolverhampton, thinking about the opportunity, in fact the need, to look at retrofit of residential properties. And there are 75,000 homes across those three cities that are in direct ownership of either those councils or housing associations. So we have a considerable amount of work going on at the moment with some pilots of just a few hundred homes to think about how we can bring those homes into a way that makes them safe and secure and provides people with life opportunities to take advantage of the world, really. And but absolutely in the city centre, it's great to hear of real life examples. I don't know, Alex or Anna or Dav, or Alexandra, would you like to add anything to that about, especially Alex, perhaps?
Yeah, so one of the other projects that I've worked on is actually in the Drury Quarter, and that's a residential project, and it's converting and extending on Northgate Street or Northwood Street, I think it was. Northwood. And that in a way was a lot simpler because you're working with quite beautiful architecture to start with, and it's got all of its quirks about it. Whereas I think there's some buildings in more of the central core which have more of its challenges because it was of the period that was build it up quick, cheap and fast. So I think it will be interesting with some of the residential tower blocks that we've got within the city, what we can do with them, especially as a fallout from Grenfell and upgrading the insulation and things like that. To that, what can we do to make sure that they're standing the test of time as well and up to today's building standards?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Dav or
Yeah, I suppose the Drury Quarter is quite interesting for its mix of developments. I think the newer ones just aren't as successful there. There's a real kind of lack of ground floor activation, and so yeah, I think that there is a real opportunity to have that character and that kind of material quality in building reuse.
There's also, there's a sort of economic success as well, because with sort of repurposing, reusing buildings, they can come to the market sooner and be occupied sooner as well, because some projects do take a very long time to deliver. And so you need that mixed balance of restoring existing buildings with new buildings, because we can't just survive on new development. It needs to be a healthy mix, and I think now embodied carbon means that there's a real drive to reuse our existing stock.
Yeah, and the area where this really comes alive, where I think the city can learn very much from some of those slightly bulldozer-happy days in the past, is of course Digbeth, and thinking about the retention of all of the character that you have in that particular part of the city, and retaining that. And we know obviously the BBC with Typhoon Wolf, for example, are going into a building which will require a considerable amount of work, but will actually be just a wonderful place to work, and have all sorts of other benefits to it. So these things need to happen at pace, don't they, really?
Yeah, I think though that Digbeth's really suffering at the moment, and the way that it's just feeling like construction barrier after construction barrier, it's actually leading to a lot of our independents going out of business, or having to relocate elsewhere. So I think there has to be a happy medium between the planned redevelopment and then how you kind of nurture the wonderful kind of individual enterprises that we have in our city.
There's a risk of gentrification, isn't there?
Yeah, and just
needs to be managed.
Making sure that we can still access parts of the city that we need to, and that businesses can still thrive within all of this redevelopment. Otherwise, we'll lose the kind of the basis of what's triggered that development in the first place.
What's inspired.
Yeah. That's why I was so glad that Dav spoke about the phasing of the Paradise Master Plan, that it wasn't, okay, let's just, if we've got the investment, let's just go for it all at once. It's introducing it to the public realm and making sure that the public buy into the development too. I thought that was good.
Yeah. I think with any development, it needs, nothing can happen overnight. So I think even if you're doing an existing building or an entire new place, it needs to be considered from a people's perspective. How do people enjoy spaces? And in some way, the buildings are the easiest things and the last things that should make a difference. It's the public realm and the connectivity that works first and foremost. Yeah. And projects like Brindley Place, they'd put in all the public realm before the buildings came. So people knew about the connectivity, they knew about the open spaces, and then the buildings came afterwards. Yeah. And from a developer point of view, that's also good added value. So it works on a commercial success as well as from a social sustainability. Yeah,
and Peter Freeman would be the first person to say that about Brindley Place, actually.
Yes.
That was one of his masterstrokes. He was talking about it yesterday at a separate conference. But I think it's interesting, Annie, you're giving it's not a warning, but it's actually a prompt actually to people like me and the City Council as we go forward with our plans for Digbeth to make sure that we're not just engaging, but we're engaging deeply and properly with the people that know that place particularly well. And of course, as pioneers of businesses in those places, you are the people we need to speak to more often.
Yeah, I think so, because I think if it takes sort of 5 or 20 years, in your kind of case in the planning, we need to think about the immediate and what's happening now as well, which I think perhaps in our kind of small projects we're able to kind of quickly try and kind of activate or challenge a problem, whilst the kind of bigger developments do take time to kind of reinforce that change.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Great. We've got time for one quick question. If anybody's now suddenly gone, actually, I need to ask that question, now is your moment. Yes, lady there.
With regard to Birmingham's vision for active communities and 15-minute cities and bringing economic value to the city centre, what place does the middle way have?
So what, sorry?
The middle way. What are your views on the future of the middle way?
I mean, we're working with Birmingham City Council and what we're trying to do is, I think, take back a lot of our highways and our over-engineered highways, because the city was all based on increasing numbers of people coming to the city, therefore driving in. Birmingham's got a famous phrase that you put your foot down when you come off the motorway. It was one of those cities, and therefore everything was modelled on more cars, more people accessing the place. And so we've got a lot of open space. If you think about space that where buildings are not being built, if we can reclaim that back for more intermodal spaces, so you have cycleways, you have opportunities for planting, you have trams active and sort of public transport, we can turn those ring roads into sort of greenways. And what's great about those ring roads, and what Manzoni did, was it did connect the city, and he didn't just build one, he built 3 of them. So we could use that space that we already have and transfer it back into active travel. And so we're not having to sort of carve out spaces to connect the city. We've got the spaces. We just need to rethink about how we use those spaces for different ways of moving around the city.
Thank you.
That's great. And Alex?
I think that might be a good one for you to ask, because in a way it's...
Hey, look, I'm going to ask the audience in a minute, because I know there's some views out there.
It feels like that's been a real barrier as well. How do you unpick it? It's kind of this arterial...
It's vast.
Yeah, it is vast.
Piece of the city. It's a really tricky one.
So what I'll say, Dav answered it beautifully. But we're emboldened, I think, and I don't say this lightly, we're emboldened by some of the work we've done around Perry Bar, for example, to thinking about, there's great political capital is spent in taking on some of these really major problems in a city like Birmingham, and the Middle Way is one of those projects that would require huge sustained energy at a political and commercial level. But we're emboldened by the work we've done at Perry Bar. We know we've got a strong transport plan. We're prepared to take these things on. And I think actually you look at the sort of the history and the stuff that Dav's pulled on here, it's not for the faint-hearted, is it? And actually you get these moments you can make real change, but you do need to get everybody pointing in the right direction. So the Our Future City Plan is setting that framework, I think, for us to be as bold as we have been in the past, I think, but maybe learning some lessons from the past as well. But Dav answered it far more beautifully. Right, I'm going to draw us to
There's a lady over there, put her hands up.
Oh, sorry, please, go for it. You need to phone those restaurants up if you've kind of booked for 8:30.
I don't know how many of you have seen the gardens on rooftops of this building.
Yeah.
When the library was built, it coincided with me retiring, and I've spent the last 10 years looking after the gardens.
Have you?
And yeah, and there's a lot of weeds up there. But
it's rained a lot, to be fair, in the past few weeks.
What I want to tell you is that the public that come up there, a lot of them from all different parts of the West Midlands, but from all over Britain and from all over the world as well. I meet all sorts of people up there. Virtually all of them just say, what a fantastic space. You know, they love it, whether they're interested in plants or not. They love the views.
Yeah.
They love that there's plants growing there, that there's birds up there. It's
Yeah.
a green space. And I've heard a couple of you mention growing things, and I just wanted to say it's really, really important to...
Yeah.
And when I'm up there, sometimes I look at the other rooftops that are just
Yeah.
grey, empty spaces, and you think, what a waste. You know?
Absolutely right, absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations on looking after that rooftop gardens. It's fantastic. And I mean, we've worked on that floor before, and every time we work in those boardrooms up there, every day you look out, there are people enjoying that space, actually, for what it is. It's fantastic to see, actually. Look, our City Council, we've got Director of Public Health, many of you know him, he's Dr. Justin Varney. He's a big advocate of rooftop gardens and growing food, in fact, vertical farming as well. So there's some really interesting plans coming through, and there should be lots more of it. But we've chosen to do filming up there. We've chosen, we're always recruiting. We've chosen to do recruitment videos up there and stuff. So, but thank you then for giving us that backdrop, because it's really great. It's fantastic. Good. Right, we are about 8:30, so I'm going to draw us to a close if I can. We started with Anna, which was a fantastic place to start because she shared the superpowers of her team and really kind of gave us an example of real engagement, deep engagement with both user groups and communities actually on projects which were sort of playful but also quite practical in their sense. And if there's one message we take from Anna's presentation, it's actually it's small but mighty, and some of those projects would be long in people's memories, I think, for the people that go engage with them. So it was a fantastic place to start. Thank you. We've touched on, I think, the main theme from Alex's slides already, actually, but this point about embodied carbon and the reuse of buildings is fascinating to hear, actually. But perhaps more than that, it was the kind of the insight and the thought and the care that had been taken to think about how people would use those buildings and therefore what were the implications of their behaviours. So thinking about little things but big things commercially, the location of cycle storage, for example. We all know that cycle use increases exponentially if you put cycle storage at the front of homes, for example, and you're carrying that through to commercial spaces, which is fantastic. It supports the broader strategies around the city, I guess. So, and lots more of that, please. I love the local economy piece as well. Actually, don't put a crap vending machine in there. It let people go to the many, many independent businesses locality. Dav, I mean, fantastic piece of history. I could hear from the noises, people love the before and after photos. It's relatively recent, but people had obviously forgotten just how bad it was. You could kind of hear the noise, couldn't you? Kind of like, God, it really did look bloody bad. But you've also reminded us that we're just irresistibly drawn to these opportunities in front of us, always. It's exciting. But we must always and also look back and reflect on the mistakes of the past, to think about how we can improve. And you nicked my line anyway. I wrote it down, but there's no point. I put a line through it. Absolutely, we've got to be bold and be Birmingham. That was the motto that came from the games. That's why the games look so good, actually, because of the work collectively you've done in the room and we've done together across time. And then Alexandra, if you can hear me, if you're still there, thank you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. So I used the word joy in opening slides, I think. And it's really important that we kind of recognise what are they like, what do they feel like? And the joyful convergence phrase was the one that leapt out at me, really. And a real privilege to get that insight into just how much detail you put into thinking about user groups there, into what was actually quite a complex scheme. So I think what you gave us there was lots to look forward to at lots of different scales, lots to look forward to at Smithfield as well. So thank you to the speakers. Thank you to RIBA for organising tonight. It's been a really interesting run through of what's going on in the city, and to VitrA, the sponsors for the event as well. They were lucky enough to sponsor it twice, so thank you for VitrA, but thank you for RIBA. But really, can we just conclude tonight's event by saying thank you to the panellists who've done a fantastic job this evening, and for you for coming along this evening. Thank you.